Good morning. Welcome to the September 22nd, 2022 meeting of the CalHFA Board of Directors. Today's meeting will be recorded for public viewing. The video recording will be posted following the meeting on the CalHFA website. Also, the meeting materials are available at the site, and that address is calhfa.ca.gov. Today's board package and public comments and handouts are posted in the handouts section of the control panel for your easy access during the meeting. There will be an opportunity for the public to comment by using the raised hand feature later during the meeting, and more information will be provided at that time. Thank you for your attention. So in order to get the meeting started, I'd like to establish a quorum by taking roll call now. Ms. Avila Farias? Here. Ms. Cabildo?
Present.
Chair Cervantes?
Present.
Dr. Imbassiani? I'm not hearing Dr. Imbassiani. Treasurer Ma?
Here. Can you see me? Hear me?
Mark, do we see Treasurer Ma?
I don't see her, but I can hear her.
Okay, I see all of you. I don't know. There's no like turn on my screen. I'll try to figure it out though.
All right, Mark can help you and behind the scenes too as well. Thank you. Mr. Velasquez?
Here.
Ms. Kerrigan for Secretary Castro Ramirez?
Here.
Mr. Prince? Mr. Prince is absent today. Mr. Russell?
Present.
Ms. Sotelo?
Present.
Mr. White?
Present.
Mr. Mr. Silber for Director ASEFA?
Present.
Ms. Miller for Director of DOF? Absent. Ms. Johnson Hall?
Here.
We do have a quorum today. And with that, I'd like to hand the meeting over to Executive Director Tina Johnson Hall.
Thank you, Melissa. I am excited to share that we now officially have a new chairman of the board, Jim Cervantes, and he is our permanent board chair. He was designated by Governor Gavin Newsom earlier this month and has already hit the ground running. Jim has decades of experience in finance, most recently as managing director in public finance for Stifel. Equally important, I think, is his experience as a member of several other boards, including serving in the chair role. Since joining our board, Jim has gone above and beyond to familiarize himself with the inner workings of the agency and the specifics of CalHFA's program. All that knowledge and work ethic together with his expertise and leadership experience is why I am really looking forward to working closely with Jim. And I can't go further without expressing my deep gratitude to Ms. Sotelo for providing continuity as acting chair these past few months. Thank you, Chair Delilah, former Chair Delilah, Acting Chair Delilah, for guiding us through that time and for all the vital contributions you have made and will continue to make in your role on the board. And now, Chair Cervantes, I will pass it over to you to make your comments.
Yeah. Thank you, Tina. And I'd like to sort of highlight a couple of notes of appreciation and gratitude. And the first is really to the governor and his staff for first appointing me to this board and then for the recent appointment as chair. I can't say how much I am honored by that and appreciate their trust in me, and will work my hardest to reciprocate that. Tina noted that I retired a couple of years ago from a 34-year career in public finance. Before that, I really started my career 40 odd years ago working in the Mission District in San Francisco doing affordable housing with a nonprofit housing development corporations. So in some sense, I've come full circle, and I really appreciate CalHFA in that it's sort of a marriage of affordable housing and sort of the effort to lift up communities in California and finance. And that's a rare combination and something that kind of touches on a number of attributes that I really valued over my career. And I look forward to this to sort of as an effort to give back to the state that I truly love and have made my home for most of my life. So with that, there's a lot of great work that this organization's been doing. We'll talk about some of that today and how it helps different communities in the state and help address, I think, one of the critical issues in California, which is how do you develop and sustain communities and how do you develop and sustain affordable housing. The second note of gratitude is to echo what Tina said, is to our former acting chair, Delilah Sotelo, who I truly appreciate for stepping into the breach, managing things. We had a chance to catch up a bit. I really look forward to sort of connecting more directly and in person to sort of like learn as much as I can from her and all this. It's a big job to step in as this, and I will be working to fill shoes as best as I can in that. So Delilah, thank you so much. And I do want to note that staff have prepared a plaque for you to thank you. I don't know if Courtney, you want to get it up, but it'll be sent your way just as a small token of appreciation, as I understand it, from staff for really stepping in and making a difference for CalHFA. And so that'll be coming your way, and I think we're going to see it on the screen maybe. So it's just a note of appreciation, something you could put on the wall and point to people. So thank you so much. It's much appreciated. I'm going to hand this back to Tina, but I thought I'd just pause for a second to see if there's any other members of the board who might like to sort of take a moment here to sort of thank Delilah for her work and effort. So before there it is. Thank you. So just a note of appreciation. It's a small token. And
thank you.
Yeah, but the service is greatly appreciated. Maybe that a pause for seconds. Are there other board members who would like to sort of make a note here before we kind of move on to this very robust agenda? Yeah.
Yes, I would, Chair Cervantes.
Thank you.
Oh, you're acknowledging. I'm raising my hand. I'm still trying to figure out how we're doing this. Raising hand, unmuting.
I can't see it on the screen, but go for it. Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity to be able to recognize our colleague, Delilah. I too want to thank you on behalf of the board and myself for your leadership in stepping in. As you know, we all know from serving in different boards and different communities and different political backgrounds, it's really hard to step in, especially, when something happens immediately. And your leadership, not only as a colleague, but as a chair the last several months, has just been impeccable and very impressive. And I appreciate the stewardship that you continue to manifest as a board member and when you stepped up as a chair. So thank you so much, because you had to allocate more hours and time to this board, which I know wasn't a problem for you because you are truly a public servant and do whatever you need to do to support our role on the board and in the community. So thank you so much, Delilah. And I look forward to continuing to work with you on this board. And I know our new chair will also appreciate all the technical skill that you bring to this board. So thank you so much for your commitment and continuing to work with you as we move forward, as we stabilize our board here. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Farias.
Chair Cervantes, I just wanted to throw all my support behind you. Thank you again for the kind words. Board Member Farias, as always, I appreciate the partnership and the collegiality. Chair Cervantes, you're walking into a wonderful staff under the leadership of Ms. Johnson Hall, and every member of the team is just so professional and really is truly motivated by doing well for California. So I encourage you to get to know them, and whatever I can do to help and support, I'm happy to be here.
Great. Thank you so much. Before I move on to the minutes, is there anyone else who'd like to make a comment?
If I may, Stephen Russell here. I just want to echo Anna Marie's comments and just, Delilah, I appreciate the values you bring to this, and I learned so much from your professional expertise. So I just look forward to when we can be meeting again in person, because I feel like I get even more from each other when we do that. But thank you for your service and for your continuing education.
Absolutely. Me as well.
Thank you, Member Russell. Any other comments? So with that, I'd like to turn to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the July 21st meeting minutes, which are included in the board package. Board members, are there any changes that should be made to the minutes? Any comments or additions, deletions, objections?
I don't have any, but I make the motion to move forward with approving the minutes from our last board meeting.
Thank you, Member Farias. Is there a second?
I'll second Director Russell.
Great, thank you very much. I think with that, we deem the minutes to be approved unless Melissa, you correct me on that. So, and with that, I'd like to make a note for, I think, Tina, you wanted some comments, and then I'd like to say a few things too as well. So let me pass this to our Executive Director then.
Thank you, Chair Cervantes. I would like to start off my comments today by sharing some great news. Several months ago, we partnered with a company called Great Place to Work to survey CalHFA staff about the culture of our organization. And I'm excited to share that our results meet the qualifications for CalHFA to be officially certified as a great place to work. This so
Great.
applause to everyone. This certification recognizes employers who create an outstanding employee experience. So this is really something great to be proud of. I also want to mention that the governor's recent executive order, which directs state agencies and departments to embed policies and procedures in their strategic plans in order to further advance equity and opportunity and address disparities in access and outcomes. This is an order that we can happily and easily comply with, as it aligns with CalHFA's central focus to emphasize equity in all of our activities. So this starts with our newly updated mission statement, which includes investing in diverse communities with financing programs that help more Californians have a place to call home. We've also written this equity focus into our business plan that the board approved in May, and it has been foundational as we have designed and expanded our programs over the past years, and also highlighted by our mortgage relief program, our forgivable equity builder loan, and the California Dream for All program, which you will hear a great deal about later today. I encourage you to read the full text of the executive order, which is included in our handouts, because it eloquently describes the state's fundamental commitment to prosperity, civil rights, and my favorite word of all, opportunity. And speaking of opportunity, in advance of our upcoming Dream for All presentation, I'd like to set the stage for a little bit before the staff goes into details in their report. Following your comments on the program's main framework that we will lay out today, and upon approval of the resolution, which is the first necessary step, we will be able to turn our attention to the detailed work that will lead directly to a program launch. I think everyone in this virtual room, along with the governor and the legislature, are looking forward to launching this program as soon as possible so that we can open up homeownership opportunities for thousands of Californians. So today's discussion and resolution approval will be a vital step forward in that process. This has already been a great undertaking with collaborative work across many, many departments. And of course, even before our staff began working on program design, we collaborated with the Treasurer's Office and California Forward on the research that has given us a great foundation to build on. I really think that you are going to like what you hear. I also want to send out another thank you for a huge internal effort our staff has been putting in to get our mixed income program projects to the board for approval. You'll hear more about this process later, along with presentations on some of the projects, but I must take the time to commend our multifamily group, financing, fiscal, and the legal departments for their work underwriting and re-underwriting and re-underwriting all of these deals. And when I say re-underwriting, I want to make it clear that we do not take these investments lightly. However, finding ways to get these units built is exactly what CalHFA is here to do. This is our mission. And I want you all to know that I spoke to each of the developers personally. In fact, some of them may be here today, and you'll hear about some of the challenges that these projects have faced. They are extraordinary. But I think what we're doing is an extraordinary commitment in an effort to address this very difficult housing challenge. I would also like to share very quickly about a few events that I spoke at over the past few weeks. Starting on September 8th, I was joined by our Director of Business Development Stakeholder Relations, Ellen Martin, in speaking to UC Berkeley graduate level housing policy class, which was taught by former CalHFA board member and now Professor Ben Metcalf. It was really fun and a treat to engage with some of the people who will be shaping the next generation of housing policy. And from what I heard, I think we're in good hands. And then on September 13th, I was honored to speak on the housing panel at the CalVet conference in San Diego, where I joined Secretary Castro Ramirez as well as Director Velasquez. The panel was moderated by our very own Dr. Bassiani, and it was truly a privilege to talk about ways that we can help veterans. And then on September 15th, I spoke on a panel along with Director Velasquez. We've been doing a lot of work together lately. And we were speaking at the San Joaquin Housing Collaborative Affordable Housing Conference. It was fascinating to do a bit of a deep dive in that particular area of California where rural, suburban, urban, and agricultural converge. And so we were able to hear about the challenges, but as well as the successes that folks in that very unique area are having. So before I end, I want to mention how happy I was that two of our very own board member Anna Marie Avila Farias and Stephen Russell, they were able to represent CalHFA at the groundbreaking ceremonies for two projects over the summer. I'll tell you, having members of our board out at these events is so valuable because it shows our partners and the public how truly invested we are in the work that we do. It also helps with our image. And I think it's important for all of us to make connections with our external partners and other stakeholders. So to commemorate Ms. Avila Farias' appearance at the celebration of Kelsey Air Station, and for Mr. Russell's participation in the groundbreaking event for Kimball Highland, I've had the staff make these little mementos for them that you're seeing, hopefully right now. We want to thank you for extending the work that we do in the markets and in the places that you live. And so with that, I will hand it over to Chair Cervantes.
Thank you so much. And I just want to make a note before we jump into the agenda here that I look forward to getting to meet the members of this board personally and have a chance to talk over the phone with a few folks. But I think it's important for me to better understand your perspective on things and sort of like take some notes along the way. And I really look forward to engaging over the next few months to sort of meet with you all directly and I think better appreciate your experience and how it comes to all together here at CalHFA. The one programmatic item I'd like to note is that in talking with Tina and Don, there are a couple of vacancies on board committees. And so in discussion with them, I've reached out to sort of address that. The first is the Audit Committee, which is chaired by Member Sotelo, and includes also State Treasurer Ma. And I've asked Fred White to join that committee to get it to its 3-person standard, and Fred has graciously accepted. So we look forward to his engagement with that and moving on the audit. The other committee is the Executive Evaluation Committee, which includes Secretary Castro Ramirez and myself. And I've asked Stephen Russell to join that as well. And he has, again, very graciously offered to participate. So we look forward to sort of moving that along, and sort of in keeping with prior tradition as the chair of the board, I'll be chair of that committee as well. And my understanding is that these committees, by their charters, have some notion of rotated membership, which I think is a good thing because it gives more board members a chance to serve over time. And I think as to sort of get things more sorted in the position of chair, I'll sort of move on that as well. But for the time being, we've got our committee set, and I look forward to them helping with the work of the board. And then in terms of the meeting itself, you'll note we have a pretty ambitious agenda, which is scheduled to run to 1:30. So we've got 3.5 hours here. Got budgeted times for each of the items, which I really like to stick to, so we can keep it to within the time frame allotted, and hopefully get us in time and under budget with respect to your time. So we'll work to sort of keep our session on track as best we can. At different junctures where there's a decision to be made, I'll ask for public input. In general, I think I want to cap that at 10 minutes, just to give individuals a heads up on that. We do want to hear from the public, but we also want to sort of keep this meeting within the time frame if that's possible as well. And so with that, I think what I'd like to do is to move on to agenda item 4, which is the board member code of conduct, which we've discussed before. And with that, I'll turn it over to council, please.
Thank you, Chair Cervantes. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see all of you again. I'm presenting to you today the proposed board member code of conduct as oh, can you hear me okay? Yes, okay. So just by way of background and reminder, because this is an item that we have visited on a couple of prior occasions, our board chair prior to Mr. Cervantes and prior to Chair Sotelo was Michael Gunning, and he commented to me that most boards do have a code of conduct that they have adopted as a means of holding themselves accountable and setting a standard for professionalism. And he wanted the CalHFA board of directors to have that same standard of professionalism in place. So the legal team at CalHFA put together a proposed code of conduct and presented it at an initial meeting where both Mr. Starr, on behalf of the treasurer, and Dr. Imbasiani had some concerns about the proposed language. And I have since incorporated verbatim both the language from Treasurer Ma and Dr. Imbasiani into the version of the code of conduct as you see it now. At the second meeting, Ms. Gunn, on behalf of CalVet, identified some other language that gave her pause. And when she had some relatively pointed questions about this, I only had partial answers because these were scenarios that the board had not ever encountered to my knowledge. The CalHFA Board of Directors has been in place since inception of the organization as its oversight body. And to my knowledge, the board has neither ever censured its own member or recommended removal of a member for misconduct. The language that gave Ms. Gunn pause, if I'm recollecting correctly, and it has been a couple of months, so please correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Gunn, was that she wanted to better understand what the board's role or abilities would be in the event, the highly unlikely event of removal of a member. So I have since had the opportunity to review the language and do a little more research, and I thought that it might be helpful to the board if I gave contextualized hypotheticals of what would happen. So the language I would point your attention to is on page 1, and I've removed the removal language, and I'm proposing today to also remove the censure language, and I'll explain why in just a moment. A board that wants to hold itself accountable always retains the ability to publicly censure a member if there is misconduct. And again, I'd like to reiterate, to my knowledge, there has never been an incident of censure by this board. But hypothetically, if let's say I'm a board member, I'm not your secretary, and I attend a public event with, for example, Director Velasquez and Director White, and I engage in coarse language or unprofessional and unacceptable conduct that is, for example, observed by Director Velasquez, he may take issue with it. I hope you don't mind me using you as my colleague in this scenario, Director Velasquez. Director Velasquez at that time, and as a distinguished professional who has many years of experience in running a team and running an organization, he may elect to approach me directly and say, Claire, what you said and how you presented yourself is unacceptable. We are public officials. We are representatives of the state of California and of Governor Newsom. My conduct might be so abrasive that Director Velasquez may also elect to elevate this incident to our board chair and to our executive director, who in concert might then elect to use proper channels, which would be to go through BCSH to report my unacceptable conduct, and in concert with BCSH would likely consider elevating this to the governor's office. This would all be done privately. This is just one potential scenario where my misconduct might be elevated to the appointing authority or other individuals who might want to directly address my conduct. In addition, Director Velasquez may elect to bring my conduct to the attention of the board. If he did this, then the board may decide in a public meeting to describe to me how my conduct was unacceptable and may formally admonish me with a censure. That would be by motion. This same or similar scenario may arise, but if my conduct was more egregious, the board may consider not wanting to have me as a member of this board. But to be clear, and this is meant to address Ms. Gunn's former point, the board could not unilaterally remove me. I would only be eligible for removal by the appointing authority. So any action such as that would need to be done in conjunction with the appointing authority, which would generally be either the governor's office or alternatively the legislator who selected me as a board member. These are scenarios that one would hope would never happen, and to my knowledge, nothing like this has ever happened, but these would be the tools at the disposal of the board to employ in the event of gross misconduct. So I have removed the language from about removal and censure from this code of conduct because my understanding was that it is deemed sort of unnecessary, and certainly we have a high enough level of professionalism amongst this board. We have an exceptional board that this would be addressed appropriately through proper channels. So as I sit here before you today, I am recommending removal of that language, but I'm open certainly to any discussion or input from any member of the board on this topic. That's all I have, Chair Cervantes, but I'm very happy to take any questions that members of the board may have. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Board Secretary Turanian. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board?
Chair Cervantes, this is Teresa Gunn.
Please,
I'd like
go.
to, thank you. I'd just like to thank Claire for the explanation and the rework of the resolution, the code of conduct. I think it's more appropriate and I appreciate it. And if others don't have comments, I move that we approve this resolution.
I
Thank you.
second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on Resolution 22-16.
If I may, I have one question, Chair. This is Sasha
Please.
Kurgan from BCSH. Claire, thank you for all your work on this. I just had one question. I'm kind of looking at number 2 under general rules of conduct. I wanted to see if you could give us an example of how we would kind of operationalize as board members and as other state team members in our context and perhaps in context of other departments that are represented here today. What are the appropriate rules of engagement to comply with the code of conduct as written under number 2 and still speak as one state team, as we often do? Could you help us with some examples here?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Kerrigan. I'm happy to attempt to do so. My recommendation would be if a member of our team is specifically attending a public event only in his or her limited capacity as a member of a CalHFA board, that he or she, if speaking publicly, I say, I'm here today in my capacity as a member of the board. Generally speaking, what we recommend, especially for you, Ms. Kerrigan, who I suspect is engaged in many, many different public activities, would make clear that when you are speaking on behalf of the state of California in your role at BCSH, that you would announce yourself and your title in your capacity as a member of the team at BCSH. Would that comport with your understanding, and would that be acceptable to you?
I think so. Yeah, I was just kind of curious about the formal authorization component of that. And if it's as you described, that makes sense, because we often at agency speak about the state housing priorities and the continuum of housing. As Executive Director Johnson Hall mentioned, how frequently her and Director Velasquez speak. The Secretary is often joined or speaking on behalf of all the departments within our agency on behalf of the governor's agenda. And I just wanted to ensure that, make sure that we stay in step with the board, and that this code of conduct does the Secretary, me, or any of us from kind of sharing CalHFA's accomplishments and kind of how this fits in with the governor's agenda. Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure it doesn't sound from what you said like we would be coming to board meetings with requests for that authorization.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see Director Velasquez has his hand up.
Thank you, Chairman. So what I'm hearing from the question from the Deputy Secretary and the answer, what I'm hearing is that, and I know we've been through this draft many, many times, so I'm inclined to offer a friendly amendment, but I want to put it to consideration of the board, because it sounds like what we're trying to do with this, with number 2, is to say, when speaking solely on behalf of CalHFA, so it is not a prohibition, but it's an affirmation of obtaining authorization from the board when speaking solely on behalf of CalHFA board, not generally, but solely on behalf of. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, Director Velasquez, that is the intent of the language.
Okay. So at least I think as long as everybody's clear that that is the intent of the language, it is, because it is, it could be read as, you know, when you are speaking about CalHFA in general, not solely for CalHFA, but that clarification is helpful. So I will not be offering. I will not be offering an amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Velasquez. Here we have a motion on the floor which has been seconded, but I want to be sure, are there any other questions on the motion?
Director Cervantes, if I can make a quick comment.
Please, Mr. Starr.
Yeah, and I know that there's a packed agenda, so I just wanted to quickly thank Ms. Taranian. Sorry, I probably butchered your last name, but I know that we've gone through a number of iterations with this board member code of conduct, and I just wanted to express Treasurer Ma's thanks and our office's thanks for your inclusion of our suggestions surrounding the disclaimer language. So thank you.
You and the Treasurer are very welcome, Mr. Starr. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Starr. Any other questions, comments on the item? I can't see everyone on the screen here, so you have to bear with me, please, but I don't think I see anything else. I would like, as much as this is an action item, I would like just to open it up maybe briefly for any public comment on this. And we'll look to staff to see if are there any hands raised or other indications if there's any comment from the public on this item.
So if you would like to make a comment now, please use the raised hand feature in the control panel, and on your picture of yourself, please raise your hand and we'll acknowledge you and get your comment. I am not seeing any raised hands at this time. Nope.
Great. Okay. Thank you. And with that, unless there's any further questions on the motion, we have resolution 22-16 up for a vote of the board. Melissa, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, Ms. Avila-Farias,
Yes.
Ms. Cabildo,
Yes.
Chair Cervantes,
Yes.
Ms. Gunn,
Yes.
Mr. Starr,
Yes.
Mr. Velasquez,
Yes.
Ms. Kerrigan,
Yes.
Mr. Russell, Mr. Russell,
Aye.
thank you. Ms. Sotelo,
Yes.
Mr. White,
Yes.
resolution 22-16 is approved.
Thank you very much. And with that, we'll move to item number 5 on the agenda, which will be a presentation on the information and development of the Dream for All Shared Appreciation Loan Program. We're looking for something like a 45-minute discussion here on this item, see how that works out, as this is really a very important topic. Ellen, I understand that you will be leading the presentation on this.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair Cervantes and members of the board. Can you hear me okay? All right. So again, for the record, my name is Ellen Martin. I'm the Director of Business Development and Stakeholder Relations, and I'm so excited to be here today to offer a detailed overview of the California Dream for All program, which is a revolving shared appreciation loan program, as I'm sure you will all recall, that was established by the 2022-23 state budget. So I would like to take this opportunity right at the top to echo Executive Director Johnson Hall's comments and thank Treasurer Ma and her team for the foundational work that they did along with California Forward to set the stage for this program. So today I'll be providing the board with a comprehensive update regarding our work to date, our stakeholder engagement process, and the anticipated timeframe for implementation of the program. We will also be seeking approval from the board to establish the Dream for All program, which will allow us to move forward with the next steps of implementation so that we can bring this program to market. So with that, Courtney, if you could go to the next slide. Thank you. So I'll begin, this is a little bit of a repeat, but I did want to begin with a very brief review of materials that we presented back in July. I'll try to kind of speed through this, but I wanted to offer an overview of what a shared appreciation loan program entails, as well as the statutory requirements for the Dream for All program. So as I'm sure you will all recall, a shared appreciation loan is a loan that is repaid by the borrower through an established share in the home's value. So if under the Dream for All program, CalHFA provides a shared appreciation loan that amounts to 20% of the home's purchase price, the borrower would then repay that 20% plus 20% of any appreciation in the value of the home. We discussed back in July that the typical features of a shared appreciation loan have many similarities with our existing down payment assistance program. These loans are typically subordinate to the first mortgage and can be used to provide down payment assistance as well as to fund closing costs. And then just like our current programs, the loan typically becomes due upon the sale, refinance, or transfer of the subject property. So one big difference with the shared appreciation loan product is that the cost to the borrower is effectively variable. By contrast, our existing My Home programs charge a simple interest at a fixed rate of 1%. But under a shared appreciation loan structure, the effective interest rate on the loan is really based on the average annual rate of real estate appreciation. That is the return that the Dream for All Fund will see from making these loans. Next slide, please. So the 2022-23 state budget established the Dream for All program It allocated $500 million to the program over 2 years, and it designated the California Housing Finance Agency as the administrator of the program. So the authorizing statute sets fairly broad parameters for the Dream for All program, and those are outlined here on this slide. So the program must include a shared appreciation loan feature. Its objective is explicitly to expand access to home ownership by helping low and moderate income home buyers purchase owner-occupied home. The design of the loan product should not unreasonably impede wealth creation. And also importantly, the program should maximize the number of households assisted over time, ensuring that the funds that we're using to help one homeowner are then recycled upon repayment to help future homeowners. As part of this initiative to have the funds recycle, the statute directs us to explore the ability to sell these mortgages on the secondary market should such a strategy be deemed to be economically feasible. The shared appreciation loan must also be paired with a CalHFA first mortgage, which means that most of these loans will be largely GSE conforming Fannie Mae products. And then finally, because shared appreciation loans are a complex financial product, the program design must include adequate consumer protections and disclosures to really ensure that the consumer understands their loan. Next slide, please. So these next series of slides attempt to offer a simplified walkthrough of how a shared appreciation loan program works, how the appreciation would be shared between the homeowner and the Dream for All fund, how the proceeds from a sale are distributed, and importantly, how the revenues from the shared appreciation loan product would be recycled to help the next homeowner. So here on the slide, we have an illustration of a home purchased at a price of $500,000. The Dream for All fund provides a 20% down payment in the amount of $100,000, meaning that the remainder of the home is financed through a first mortgage loan amounting to $400,000. Next slide, please. Fast forward 5 years, the value of this home in this example has appreciated to $640,000. So that's about $140,000 in home price appreciation. That appreciation is split between the homeowner and the Dream for All fund, with the homeowner receiving 80% of the home price appreciation, which amounts to about $112,000, and the Dream for All fund receives 20%, so a pro rata ratio to its original investment of, so 20% is about $28,000 of the $140,000 appreciation. Next slide, please. So as this homeowner goes to sell their home, this next illustration shows how the proceeds of that sale are distributed. So the Dream for All fund would receive a loan payback in the amount of $128,000. So that's the original Dream for All loan amount of $100,000 plus the Dream for All fund's share of appreciation, which is the $28,000. So that's how we come to the $128,000 of the Dream for All payback. There's a remaining first mortgage balance after consideration of principal payments that have been made over the last 5 years of about $370,000. And so that is paid off with the proceeds of the loan. That leaves about $142,000 in homeowner equity, which is indicative of the wealth that the homeowner has accumulated over the last 5 years of home ownership. If we can go to the next slide. So this equity comprises 2 elements. There's the homeowner's share of appreciation, that $112,000 that we talked about in that first box. And then there's the $30,000 that they have made in principal payments towards the original first mortgage loan. So those 2 factors combine to equal the homeowner equity or wealth generated over the life of this loan of $142,000. Next slide, please. So this slide illustrates the concept of fund recycling, offering a simple example of how we intend to recycle those funds. So when homeowner 1 sells their house at $640,000, they will pay the Dream for All fund back in the amount of $128,000. we can then use that $128,000, we can recycle those funds to help our next homeowner purchase a commensurately priced house. So we use that $128,000 to then help the next homeowner make a 20% down payment on a $640,000 house. Next slide. So the prior slides offered a simple example of how shared appreciation works in concept, but as we are embarking on our program design process, I want to continue to emphasize that we really need to remain aware of real estate dynamics and the cyclical nature of home price appreciation trends, which are illustrated by the chart on the left of this slide. So here we're showing the actual year-over-year home price changes with the spiky orange line and the average annual rate of real estate appreciation over the same time period is shown by the dashed blue line. So while the average annual rate of real estate appreciation does range from about 4 to 5% over the long term, you can see that the actual rates of change on a year-to-year basis are much more volatile. And I said this last time, but I think it's worth re-emphasizing. It's really this volatility that we at the agency need to keep top of mind in thinking about how we're going to operationalize this program that meets our goals and objectives, while also understanding how the variability of the real estate market cycle will influence things. So with that backdrop in mind, the key objectives of the California Dream for All program, as informed by statute, as well as early stakeholder input and our program design efforts, are listed over on the right-hand side of the slide. So fundamentally, the goal of the program is to increase access to homeownership for low and moderate income Californians. We would do that through the Dream for All program by offering larger down payment assistance that helps our home buyers to compete in this highly competitive market. Relatedly, and as illustrated by the prior few slides, another goal of the program is to provide opportunities for wealth accumulation through homeownership, that ability for a homeowner to grow their wealth through equity in their home. Next is minimizing financial risk to the consumer, to the agency, and to the state by building in the safeguards and features that can help to blunt the effects of this real estate market volatility and ensure that consumers are financially equipped for the responsibility of homeownership. As I mentioned, a key tenet of the Dream for All model is ensuring that funds are recycled, that monies come back into the fund, and that they do so at a rate that is sufficient to provide similar levels of assistance to future homebuyers. Of course, we will need to make sure that consumers are fully educated regarding what they are signing up for and that we remain in contact with them regarding their obligations over the entire term of their loan. And then finally, we need to design the program such that we can effectively operationalize it over the long term. So another thing that I said last time, and I think bears repeating, is that it's really important at the outset of this program to acknowledge that there are a number of contradictions and conflicts inherent in these program objectives. And as we get into, I think, a further conversation about the program, you'll hear me reference these trade-offs regularly. But just by way of example, we are trying to increase access to home ownership while also minimizing financial risks to the state. So we have to ensure that we are not making riskier loans that are at risk of default as we seek to increase access to home ownership. Similarly, the program is focused on increasing wealth, but we're also trying to ensure that the funds are recyclable. So there are certain provisions that might create additional equity for the home buyer, and we'll talk about some of those in a minute, but that could result in reduced program revenues. And so we need to think about that and how to balance those particular trade-offs. So we know that these and other trade-offs will need to be made as we establish the program parameters, and those trade-offs are really what will underpin our discussions and recommendations regarding initial design parameters. Next slide, please. So I'd like to spend just a bit of time now talking about how we have and plan to approach stakeholder and consumer outreach and engagement as part of our design and implementation process. We have a multi-pronged approach, which includes public listening sessions, an advisory working group, lender roundtables, and a consumer marketing and outreach plan. And so I'll look to just touch on each of these elements briefly in the coming slides. Next slide. So over the last 3 weeks, we have conducted a series of 3 virtual public listening sessions that were open to any interested member of the public. The intent of these sessions was to receive feedback and input from the stakeholder community and the public to inform and validate our program design recommendations. We issued notices to over 1,600 individuals, and we had nearly 250 individuals sign up for the sessions. We also provided an email address and a survey tool that was available online via which stakeholders could also provide feedback. The survey period just ended yesterday and we received over 50 responses. So now that these listening sessions are complete and the comment period has closed, as a next step, we will produce a findings report that summarizes the public comments and input that we have received, and we'll bring that back to the board to make sure that you're fully informed regarding what we are hearing as part of these public listening sessions. Next slide, please. So as we move into the implementation stage of Dream for All, we intend to convene a working group to hear advice and input from industry experts regarding the implementation of the Dream for All program. So we plan to ask the working group to advise on specific and discrete implementation topics and questions, most notably the social equity features of the program, which we'll be discussing momentarily. And to do that, we are targeting a representative group of experts representing the policy, advocacy, and lending arenas that can really help to offer their expertise on a series of discrete program design and implementation topics as we move into implementation of the program. Next slide, please. Our lending community will, of course, be absolutely critical to successful implementation of the Dream for All program. So we've also had targeted engagements with them. These engagements helped us to workshop key program design elements and implementation considerations to ensure that program features we are considering and evaluating can be operationalized via our existing infrastructure and delivery system, and then also critically to identify lender onboarding and training needs. And so these conversations will of course be ongoing as we move into and through implementation. Next slide, please. So as we move towards delivering a shared appreciation loan product to the market, we will also be developing a robust marketing and outreach plan seeking to reach our key consumers and to amplify awareness of the program, especially in minority communities and communities that have historically been underserved by the mortgage markets. So I do want to take this opportunity to underscore the fact that in general, CalHFA's single-family lending programs perform quite well with regard to serving underrepresented programs, in particular our specialty and niche lending programs. So when we look at these programs and who our programs serve relative to the statewide population, we note that we are consistently tracking and often outperforming relative to the statewide composition of Latino, Black, and AAPI populations. This is really due to 2 factors. One is our targeted marketing and outreach efforts, and the second also has to do with our robust lending infrastructure, which offers the culture and language competencies needed to serve a wide variety of communities. In particular, our qualified lenders work with a number of mortgage brokers that are uniquely able and qualified to work on the grounds in diverse communities throughout California. So we'll certainly use and importantly build on this existing model to ensure that consumers that can benefit from a shared appreciation loan program are aware of and can access Dream for All. And we'll also be coming back to the board with an update regarding the details of our ultimate marketing and outreach plan as a next stage of implementation. Next slide, please. So moving now into our recommendations for initial program design parameters. Since we last spoke to the board about the Dream for All program, we at the agency have been working very, very hard to evaluate a wide variety of program design considerations. So again, this effort was really informed by the good work that the Treasurer's Office and the California Forward team did with their framework report. We carefully reviewed the issues they identified and the recommendations that they made as part of our process. Throughout that process, we have developed the series of recommendations that I'll go through in the next few slides. And these initial design parameters, once finalized, will allow our staff to proceed with the next steps of implementation. So namely, creating the legal, the technological, and the program infrastructure needed to deliver the program. So before I get into those recommendations, I want to note that this infrastructure build on our end is roughly a 10 to 12-week process that is really dependent on having these key program features that I'm going to talk about locked down. So we can always make adjustments and refinements to the program post-implementation, but often those changes will require additional programming time. So we really have to pick a juncture at which to start the initial programming and to start this 10 to 12-week process that will allow us to launch the initial program. So our recommendations regarding what that initial juncture looks like is what we're going to talk about in the next few slides. Next slide. So to begin, we recommend that the Dream for All Shared Appreciation Loan Program be available to first-time home buyers earning up to CalHFA's income limits, which are essentially 150% AMI. So this gives us the ability to serve higher cost areas and provide access to home ownership for more moderate income earners that are still challenged by low inventories and high costs throughout California. So this is something that we've really heard loud and clear from our public listening sessions. Folks were very concerned that we didn't set the income limits too low and lock out folks who still really need this level and type of assistance. Per the statute, as I mentioned, this Dream for All Shared Appreciation loan would be paired with a CalHFA first mortgage, which means it would need to be a GSE conforming loan, just like our current programs. So next, we recommend that the Dream for All Shared Appreciation loan be available for up to 20% of the home purchase price and be available to fund down payments and non-recurring closing costs, including interest rate buydowns. So a 20% DPA is sufficient to help enhance access to higher priced homes and importantly can help a borrower to avoid or minimize mortgage insurance while balancing the desire to ensure that we are not unreasonably impeding wealth creation through sort of excessive shares of appreciation, shares of the home price appreciation. Next slide, please. So this slide outlines key recommended loan terms. Repayment would be due upon resale, refinance, or transfer of the property. And the appreciation would be split between the homeowner and program on a pro rata or a one-to-one basis, meaning that if Dream for All provides a loan for 20% of the home purchase price, then we would share in 20% of the appreciation. And I want to just take a moment to note that this loan term is a hugely advantageous loan term relative to those shared appreciation products that are available on the private market. Those tend to take a much, much higher share of the home price appreciation, I've seen up to 80% of the home price appreciation for a 20% down payment. So this one-to-one appreciation share is consistent with Fannie Mae Community Second requirements, and we think very favorable to the homeowner. We are recommending that the program include a cap on the total amount of appreciation that the program can receive. This is a slight departure technically from the California Forward report recommendation, but it's consistent with concerns that we heard from the listening sessions, and I think consistent in spirit with what the California Forward report contemplated. So the reason that California Forward did not include a cap on appreciation is because of the importance of ensuring that the program generates enough revenue to recycle funds and provide assistance to the next homeowner. However, as I've mentioned several times, we are also focused on consumer education and disclosure. And we have significant concerns about having the ability to disclose to our borrowers what the upper end of their obligations under the program will be. And we think there's a big advantage to being able to say your total obligation under the shared appreciation loan product is X. So we are recommending that the program impose a cap, but we're recommending that that cap be sized based on the average amount of appreciation that a homeowner would see over the life of a 30-year loan, with average appreciation amounting to 5% annually. So in other words, what you would typically see. And we think that this provides an ideal balance between funding recyclability, so making sure that the appreciation that the program does capture is sufficient to help the next homeowner, and balancing the need for very clear consumer disclosures. And then it also has the salutary benefit of sort of helping to temper the effect of major real estate market upswings. Next slide, please. So next, we have the proposed social equity features of the Dream for All Shared Appreciation Loan Program. While the Dream for All program as a whole is really focused on social equity goals associated with increasing access to home ownership for our low and moderate income communities and the associated wealth generating benefits of home ownership, we have also heard loud and clear from various stakeholders that there's a real interest in offering additional program benefits for communities that have historically been underserved. So we really think that this is a key area where we would like the working group to play a large role, helping us to define the benefiting communities, the size and the nature of those benefits, and importantly, how we balance the trade-off between benefits for these borrowers and the imperative that the Dream for All funds recycle. So as part of the listening sessions, we did, however, hear concerns that while it's important to be careful and deliberate regarding these social equity features, we should have some level of these features in place upon initial rollout of the program. So we are proposing these initial social equity features that would be part of the program at initial rollout, with the stipulation that we would like the working group's input regarding the final social equity benefits and parameters, which would be implemented as a second phase of the program. So as currently structured, we would offer additional considerations for borrowers earning under 80% AMI. And this is consistent with our existing forgivable equity builder loan program. These benefits would be capped initially at 10% of the available program funds. So that would be $25 million for the first year of the program. In order to help these borrowers reap the wealth accumulating benefits of home ownership, we would propose that the program receive a reduced share of appreciation for this class of borrowers. So more specifically, the program share of appreciation would be set at 75% of the initial investment. So if the shared appreciation loan was 20%, the payback of that loan would be the principal amount of the loan plus 15% of the appreciation in the home's value, and then the homeowner would get 85%. And then, of course, there may be additional considerations that we would establish with the working group's input. Next slide, please. So I'll wrap up here with a topic that I think everyone is most interested in, which is timeline. I would venture to say that this was absolutely the #1 question we got as part of the stakeholder listening sessions. Folks want to know when this product will be available, and they'd like it to be available soon. And that's really what we've been hearing consistently since the program was established as part of the budget. So given what we've heard, given the good work done by the Treasurer's Office and the large amount of community engagement that was conducted as part of completing the California Forward report, we've been able to develop a timeline that really prioritizes getting a product to the market. And as I mentioned before, is contingent on nailing down these initial program parameters that I just talked about. So next slide, please. So we are currently here in the program design phase, and subject to feedback that we received from the board today, we are ready to move into the programming phase. So the programming phase entails building that internal legal, technological, and program infrastructure that will allow us to be able to offer the Dream for All Shared Appreciation Loan. It's important to note again that this programming phase requires about 10 to 12 weeks of back-end work, meaning it really can only start once the key program design parameters are established. So if we're able to start that programming effort in late September, early October. We think that we can have the initial program, based on the parameters that I outlined earlier, ready to go live in early 2023. So that would mean that we are conducting our working group meetings on a parallel basis, and the input that the working group provides may be integrated as part of a second phase of program implementation. It's also important to note that once our program goes live, our lenders will need about 30 to 60 days to build their own systems. And then we would actually start seeing reservations come through some 30 days after we establish that lender critical mass and capacity. So I also want to underscore that it is absolutely not an accident that we're showing you this timeline as a circle. We do not anticipate that the initial program will be locked in stone. Like all of our programs, we are continually adjusting and refining on an ongoing basis and sort of reinitiating this cycle as we move through implementation. Next slide, please. So with all of that, thank you so much for your patience. I know that was a lot. I'll end here on the staff recommendation slide. We are seeking the board's approval of Resolution 22-21 that would establish the Dream for All program. It directs staff to develop the necessary guidelines, term sheets, documentations, and technological capabilities to implement the program. And directs us to report back to the board on a regular basis regarding our progress. Currently, we are anticipating providing the board with updates after the working group meetings, upon development of the consumer marketing and outreach plan, and upon initial implementation of the program. But we will, of course, be circling back with the board should earlier and more often should circumstances warrant. So with that, thank you again for your patience, and I would be more than happy to take any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Ellen, and I'd like to thank you and your team for all the work on this effort. It's been considerable. You've really advanced it a long way since the prior discussion of the last board meeting. I think this provides a great opportunity for prospective homeowners in California to sort of share in the dream. And I also want to echo your earlier note to acknowledging the role of our member, Treasurer Ma, in moving this along and moving this project to something that could become a reality. It's innovative and thoughtful, and it's good to have her on this team. And also note the role of California Forward as well. It's all very creative. Now with that, I guess what I'd like to do is to see if there are any board member comments, questions. We'll have a discussion. I'd like to open it up for some public input, and we'll just see how much time we have for that. Probably 10 minutes, maybe more, we'll see. And then bring it back to some discussion and action on the motion. So are there any board member comments, questions, thoughts, or ideas?
I have questions.
Yeah,
But I believe Fred put his hand up before I spoke.
Yeah, I can't see everyone here, so my apologies, but please proceed.
Yeah.
This is a quick comment, Maria, Chairman Cervantes. This is Director White. My question to the staff is just, how does the board help you throughout the state in terms of making this known in various areas of the state? And I asked that question in light of a motion we just passed, and I want to make sure that I'm clear on how we, as board members, can speak on it in different arenas.
Thank you so much. Mr. Chair, may I respond?
Yes, please.
Thank you so much for that question. I think that's a fantastic question. I think from a marketing and outreach standpoint, we will certainly be looking to leverage the intellectual capabilities and capacities of all of our staff members and our board members. I think what will be really important is, as we're all out there talking about the program, that we are all crystal clear on the requirements and the consumer education piece, because we want to make sure that the folks that are taking out a shared appreciation loan really understand what they are getting into. And we do have the benefit, while this type of program has not been done at the scale that we're currently contemplating, there's really no precedent for it. There are others who've tried. And we know that where the challenges occur is in this consumer education and disclosure piece and making sure that the homeowners really understand what their loan is all about. So I think speaking with one voice and absolute clarity regarding the program parameters and consumer rights and responsibilities, and how this program can help them to access home ownership would really be of great value to us as we implement this program.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, member. Thank you, Ellen.
Yes, Chair Cervantes?
Member Cavilla, please go ahead.
Oh, great. I had a couple of questions. I know that, you know, reaching out to over 1,200 folks for outreach is a large number of folks, but we only receive 50 surveys. So that causes me pause. So I'm curious if you reached out to these established networks like Unidos and NeighborWorks America that have extensive homebuyer education programs across the state for input. That's one question. The second question I had was, since you've mentioned the importance of consumer education, are there plans within the program to resource education efforts out through established networks like Unidos and NeighborWorks America? And the third question is around risk. I know that oftentimes these communities that are underserved don't have the access to credit that middle-class households have and are often saddled with higher debt, are victims of predatory consumer loans. And so I know that there's been a concern, at least in the community level, of different types of underwriting, ways of establishing creditworthiness that may be outside the norm. And just really thinking about what CalHFA is thinking of in terms of different ways of accessing risk for these consumer households that have been traditionally left out of credit. And my final question is around refinancing, because we're in an environment where interest rates are rising. We hope that in the future, interest rates will be more accessible. I know that a lot of people are going to get locked out of home ownership right now because of interest rates rising. And do these loans allow an opportunity for consumers to refinance into a lower rate CalHFA loan in the future? So that's all my questions, and I know Ellen has fabulous answer to all of them.
Okay, I'll do my best to take them from the top. I may need some reminders, so please let me know if I don't answer your questions completely. So your first question had to do with the networks that we reached out to. Yes, absolutely. We included the networks that you mentioned, as well as many, many others. And we actually were quite pleased with the level of participation that we received. It's often that you sort of, you issue a large invite and you get a smaller response, but we found that the listening session attendees were quite representative of the ecosystem, and we did have over 250 signups. So now only 50 people took the time to fill out the survey, but I can say my brief review of our initial survey results indicated that there, again, we captured a broad variety of members of the public and stakeholder, and they provided us with some really thoughtful answers to our survey questions. So your next question was about consumer education and resources. And yes, we will be sourcing specific consumer education. We are currently working out what exactly that looks like, but our intent is to require our borrowers to take a homeowner education course that would require an additional certification. stipulating that they understand the terms of the shared appreciation loan. And then we will also be disseminating said consumer education throughout the housing counseling network and throughout our outreach with community-based organizations, because just like the board, I think that those organizations and ensuring that they understand what this loan product is will really be critical. Your next question was about risk and access to credit for lower income folks who perhaps don't have the same level of credit that others do. This has been a big topic of conversation because and this is actually a big topic of conversation in the California Forward report as well, because we have this trade-off between increasing access to home ownership and mitigating financial risk. And it's really critical and important that this program be sustainable and that we don't have levels of default that could put the program at risk on an ongoing basis. We also have the requirement that the mortgage the shared appreciation loan be tied to a CalHFA first mortgage, which means that essentially it has to be GSE conforming. So those are kind of the parameters that we have with regard to the credit box. We are working with our master servicer to fully understand what options we might have with regard to the credit box, and with some data on how the initial loans perform, I think that's something that we will be looking at on an ongoing basis. So your last question, which was also a great question, had to do with refinancing and whether homeowners would have the ability to refinance. There could be some barriers to refinancing because of the size of this down payment. And so that's something that we are tackling as part of our servicing and consumer disclosure work, which will be the next phase of I don't want to say that's a question that we're addressing down the road, because we're sort of in the middle of it now. It's like the next intersection that we're coming up to. But our initial thoughts are that in limited circumstances, we may need to make some exceptions in order to facilitate rate refinances should there not be sufficient homeowner equity. But we want to make sure that those circumstances are limited and really based on financial need and focused on that desire to accumulate, that goal of accumulating wealth, so that we're not impeding funding recycling. So again, this is kind of a trade-off between wealth creation and recycling of the funding, because if to the extent that folks refinance and if they don't pay off this loan, then we're missing out on an opportunity to get those funds back. So we want to make sure that we really thread the needle on this topic, and we make sure that we are getting funds back into the fund as quickly as possible, but not as required by the statute, not unreasonably impeding wealth creation for our borrowers. Does that answer your questions?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great.
Chairman Cervantes, Teresa Gunn. I have a couple questions.
Please go ahead.
Does the program allow for the borrowers to potentially repay this loan early? The down payment 20%, and in essence, either lock their equity share amount at that time of repayment. And then the second question is, what happens for those borrowers who aren't going to refinance, aren't going to resell the house, they buy it, they stay in it for the 30 years or however long, and potentially pass away while that loan is outstanding and children inherit this house? How does that scenario work?
That's a great question. I asked the same thing. Okay, so your first question was about repayments and partial repayments. So yes, absolutely. We want to encourage folks to make repayments on this loan as quickly as possible. There are some challenges in terms of how you would deal with a partial repayment and what that means for the appreciation share that we're working out as part of our servicing and disclosure efforts. Your second question was, what happens if somebody holds on to their house for 30 years and they pass away and they hand it off to their children inherit it? I'm going to use the wrong words, so if Claire wants to jump in and correct me with the appropriate legal terms, please do feel free. But my understanding is that that would not trigger a repayment event, and the children that inherit the property would be able to assume the shared appreciation loan. Now, the shared appreciation loan would be due upon termination of the first mortgage. So if somebody lives in their house for 30 years, they pay off the first mortgage, the shared appreciation loan would be due at that time. However, if you didn't have the cash available to refinance at that time or to pay it off at that time, you would basically refinance that shared appreciation loan into a new first mortgage on the property, likely at a much lower rate, at a much lower payment level than you had been paying for the prior 30 years.
So then follow along. So if you refinance the mortgage appreciation loan, in essence, the 20% down is all we're talking about. Then it continues to be a shared appreciation loan, and no.
Yeah,
Okay.
you pay it off. Yeah.
So you just refinance it, pay it off, and then if I sell the house later, you don't share in the equity.
Exactly.
CalHFA does. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Member Russell has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I really want to thank you, Ms. Martin, and your colleagues for taking what is a really complex set of values and intentions and turning it into program elements. That is alchemy of the finest order. So thank you for your skilled approach there. I have a couple of questions and a comment. I'll start with the comment, which is, a lot of conversations about home ownership. San Diego Housing Commission was part of it, and San Diego Housing Federation were part of a team that just received a Worth grant from $7.5 million from Wells Fargo to increase BIPOC home ownership in San Diego. So there's a consortium model here that I would want to plug you into that is going to work a lot with eligible families, helping them become eligible and then helping them be aware. Some of the parties include NAC, NAREB, and NAREP. You might be familiar with. And I got so that those conversations were really, really helpful. And what I heard, and also a conversation with Ellen Nash from BayPAC, I just happened to talk to her yesterday, who was involved in the home ownership, the Keep Your Home program, and just really commending CalHFA for the role, the way that they engage with the community locally, with local institutions to do it. So I feel very comfortable with the infrastructure. When we talk about the equity elements of this program, that the biggest hurdle that they found was actually people believing that they were worthy and capable of owning a home, and that education was actually, there's a large pool of people who are quite capable, don't believe it, and that the trusted messengers and the education is really what makes them go from, to be able to proceed in the program. And so again, I will commend you for the previous outreach we've done with the other mortgage program, and I'm sorry, the name is escaping me. But if we follow that model, I have a lot of confidence that the social equity elements of the loan will be addressed in how we reach out to and help these folks move forward. A couple questions I have is, so on the selling on the secondary market, I guess I'd like to have a better understanding. Are we, there's a balance there, returning money to recycle to new borrowers potentially, which is the upside. My question is, if we're selling these loans, are there sufficient protections? As long as we're holding the mortgage, as long as we have the first and we have this, this down payment loan, I'm comfortable that we will be taking good care of our borrowers. Can we be assured when on a secondary market that all of the terms of this are observed? And maybe that's a simple answer. The second one is a question about condominium eligibility. I know it's a different market. It has been traditionally an entree into home ownership for a lot of lower income families. Very few new condos are being put on the market at the present time, but we're expecting to be a significant wave of condo conversions taking place in future years as the 10-year liability period of apartment buildings run out and asset holders decide to recapitalize out of those. So I just would want us to look over the horizon. Are condominiums currently eligible? And second, if, whether they are or not, we should anticipate that there is a wave of opportunities coming in the condominium market for this population. So hopefully you follow. I think there was 2 questions and a comment in there.
I did. Thank you so much. So your first question had to do about selling these on the secondary market. And as I outlined in the slide deck, we are required by statute to explore the ability to sell these loans on the secondary market as a means to sort of accelerate recyclability of the mortgages. That really depends, that approach and that strategy depends upon there being an investor out there that is willing to purchase these loans and ideally purchase these loans at par, right? So we think it's probably unlikely that we are going to find much appetite, if any appetite, in the secondary market to purchase these loans. And if we do find somebody who's interested in purchasing these loans, we expect that it's likely to be at a huge discount, which really would render the program economically infeasible. So candidly, our initial research indicates to us that that's probably not a path that we anticipate going down. In terms of condominium eligibility, yes, condos are eligible. And in fact, there was a great article, I think just a couple days ago in the Chronicle that one of our single family colleagues shared with me about somebody using our forgivable equity builder loan to purchase a condo in San Francisco. And so that was a great success story to see. And we're hoping to see many, many more of them with Dream for All.
Great. Other questions?
This is Sasha Kurgan. I have just a couple comments and a couple questions. May I?
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. First, I just want to relay some excitement about this new program that can really be part of our tools to address our well understood and ongoing need to support access to homeownership opportunities. So wonderful to have this tool in our toolbox. And I, like other board members, appreciate CalHFA staff for this presentation and all the work behind the scenes to set a really solid foundation here that includes critical steps of a successful program, including stakeholder engagement, partnership, and extensive outreach. Speaking, just if I may for a second, on behalf of the secretary, she wanted to relay how critical it is to get this right as a proof of concept so that this tool can be sustainably leveraged in our state's efforts to increase homeownership. And I'll take personal privilege to say that I'm excited to see how this tool can be leveraged across the state, up and down the state, and as many corners as possible. Thank you for sharing that San Francisco condo example. That gives me some hope about how this can be applied throughout regions. On the advisory work group, I think it's really important to have a diversity of expertise and geographies represented at the work group level. And the secretary and I will both be really interested to hear the feedback from the advisory working group on any other critical steps which they recommend. And so that gets to one point on cadence of updates. I think at this point in the circle that you showed us about timeline, the secretary and I are both very interested in hearing updates as frequently as possible to the board about how the program is going. So those are all the comments, most of the comments. The questions really relate to the social equity layer. I appreciate that the social equity layer will be inherent to the program and not separate from or sequential to the initial launch. That feels especially critical. I do want to lift up Member Calugo's comments about exploring alternatives to credit scores, and seeing prominent lenders explore this gives me hope that we might be able to consider alternatives here, especially as, for any of the borrowers, but especially as we explore the social equity layers. So a couple questions relate to social equity. When you're saying that the social equity features will be at initial launch and then could be changed later, we heard about the programming components and the timeline there. But I wonder if you have a timeline for how quickly some of the social equity features could be revisited and integrated in case there are early concepts from the work group members or otherwise. So that's question one. And then question two, and in your presentation, you mentioned that as an initial design feature that the social equity benefit would be capped at 10% of the available program funds. I'm curious how you arrived there and why it couldn't be higher. And then you commented on how you highlighted how an increased share of appreciation in the social equity layer is a great feature and a good show of the ways that the agency is thinking about how to create additional wealth opportunities for those under 80%. But I wonder if there's a way, and if you have ideas about how to further limit the share of risk for the homeowner. You talked about the benefit. How do we mitigate risk? So I think 3 questions, Ellen, and you're doing a great job in answering everybody's questions.
Okay, well, I know you'll help me out if I miss any element of one of your questions. So, okay, so your first question was, as we're revisiting social equity layers, how can we ensure, or how quickly can we integrate and update those features? And I can feel our single staff giving me eyes from down on the 9th floor, single family staff. So I'll tell you that it depends on what the programming change is, right? So if it's an income-based programming change, then that is more simple. If it's a geographic-based layer, that can be more complicated because we basically have to build in all the parameters into our system to be able to pick and choose which geographies are subject to the social equity benefit. So it really, I'm not trying to dodge your question, but it does really depend on the future of the program. But it probably wouldn't be any longer than the initial programming process. And I do think I've seen this agency be extremely agile and extremely nimble in terms of turning around those programming updates when we need to make recalibrations to our program. So I have all the confidence in the world that we will continue to do the same with this program. So then in terms of the social equity features and how we arrived at the cap of 10%. So, and I'm actually going to jump straight to your question of, can it be higher? And I think the answer is yes, but here is where we would really like the working group to help provide some guidance. So absolutely, the working group could come in and they could say, 10% of available program revenues, that's not really enough. We think that, you can still have a sustainable program if you go to 15, 20 more. But here we really want their help, and we would value their input in terms of making sure that we are balancing and hearing all of the voices with regard to the funds that we're not recycling, or that I shouldn't say we're not recycling, that we're not recycling at the same rate that we would otherwise. We are foregoing some level of program revenues, and balancing that with these social equity benefits and the benefits that we're conferring on this specific class of borrowers. So we felt that 10% was an appropriate and conservative number as a start to ensure that we don't really get, kind of out ahead of our skis with this program, and specifically with the social equity feature, because we do so want the working group to come in and help us to identify that. And then in terms of, I'm not quite sure I totally understood your last question, but you were talking about limiting the risk for the homeowner. And I think that comes down to really 2 aspects. And again, another one of these programmatic trade-offs. As we've all said so many times, CalHFA fundamentally is seeking to promote sustainable homeownership, right? We want to make sure that not only are we increasing access to homeownership and that we're providing tools for folks to be able to access homeownership, but we want to make sure that they are able to stay in that home for a long period of time, or a home, ideally. So it's really important to us that we provide that consumer education and disclosure. And I think that ongoing education and ongoing disclosure that follows our initial work with the consumer to educate them on this loan will be absolutely critical. And that is indeed, in some ways, it's more than what we do for our current programs, because we absolutely intend to have touch points with these consumers on an ongoing basis that goes beyond sort of just your standard annual disclosures. We want to make sure that we're talking to them, that we are providing access to counseling, that we're providing access to resources that help them to maintain home ownership over the long term. So I hope that answered your last question.
That was helpful. Yep, I'll be really excited to hear what the work group recommends. And then just going back to the 10%, I appreciate that clarification and the nuance, because I just offer that I don't think that we're in a binary space on recycling or not, but it's just, as you said, a lower share of recycling and nominal at 5%. And so I'd encourage, but I'm interested to hear what other board members and work group members say about the 10% share. It is of 500 million, 50 million, and we know the type of need that exists. Thank you so much for the answers, Ellen and Chair.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Okay, I see a couple of hands up. I think Mr. Starr, Ryan, I got you next.
And
Thank you so much.
Chair Cervantes, also Delilah.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
I just wanted to echo Ms. Kurgan's comments about the excitement that our respective bosses feel about this effort. We're incredibly excited about the Dream for All program, and also wanted to extend Treasurer Moz and our office's gratitude to Ms. Martin and Mr. Kabir for briefing our agency on CalHFA's proposal here. It was extremely helpful to learn how this proposal in part departs from California Forwards and the reasons for why. So thank you again for that. One question I have, it's my understanding that CalHFA seeks to have a third party service the loans provided under the program. And I'm wondering if Ms. Martin, you can share, what does CalHFA feel the advantages or disadvantages, if any, of using a party other than CalHFA to service the loans?
Great question. Thank you so much, Mr. Starr. So we are evaluating whether or not we think a third-party servicer would be advantageous. So we haven't come to any conclusions regarding whether or not we want to outsource that servicing. And to your point, we'll absolutely be arraying the advantages and disadvantages of having a third-party servicer as part of that evaluation. But we currently service $80,000 My Home subordinate second mortgages. So we have the infrastructure, we have the capabilities, and so we will be evaluating the services and advantages that a third party might be able to provide against our own capabilities in the coming weeks.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. We've got Ryan and Delilah.
Ryan Silber on behalf of Director SEPA from the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. And we were really glad to see the recommendations highlighting a focus on communities that have been historically excluded or underserved by public and private home financing mechanisms. And we just encourage staff to continue pursuit of this point, and echoing Director Russell's comments on proactive outreach serving a really positive function in pursuit of this goal, but also wants to encourage a place-based data informed approach to serving impacted communities. Some of examples of this would be focusing on stabilizing communities facing current displacement pressures. So we have a robust body of research pointing to neighborhood stabilization as foundational to inclusive economic growth, and home ownership in part being the most effective model for displacement avoidance beyond its obvious equity building functions. And really happy to see the commitment to a thoughtful approach through the advisory working group, but also wanted to comment on the 10% cap on social equity funds currently. Just really understand the desire to see results and implement a program immediately, but want to encourage a commitment to a higher amount and more expansive program in the future. And I also acknowledge Ms. Martin's comments about the complexity of layering in geographic considerations, but I think the technical advisory group is a great opportunity to bring in researcher perspectives and really hear about the variety of existing data tools that can identify these historically impacted communities and really lead to a quicker implementation of these goals. But thank you for the explanation of the program today. It sounds like an excellent program for equity building.
Thank you. And I've got Member Sotelo.
Thank you so much. And Board Member Silver, I can't support you enough. I mean, that's exactly what I was going to, because in the Keep Your Home program that we did, CalHFA did such a wonderful job of really tracking the assistance to the demographics that we were trying to target. And Ms. Martin, what I would say is, to the extent that we have developed a very robust and active single-family unit that is really able to service our loans, and has done it so well under Keep Your Home. I'm just encouraging us to keep it in-house for a moment, right, before taking out and using a third party to service these loans. So as you think about developing the program, think about the strength of keeping it within the organization where we've already built so much of the work and the processes. With regard to the equity platform and making sure that the dollars are going where they're needed, I think that whether you do that through the advisory working group or you come back to the board here for discussion, I think it's really important for us to create a perspective around targets and goals, and really inspire you to keep the tracking first and foremost as you're thinking about how to deploy the resources, not only geographically, but also, through different income bands, as board member Russell said, through different product types, but then most importantly through, the equity lens of, the racial diversity that we see in the homeownership space. So making sure that we're tracking Latino homeownership, African American homeownership, and Asian American homeownership in a very meaningful way. The resolution, I know, speaks to giving the staff the authority to develop the program and then periodically check back with us. I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of formalize the input of the board more strategically, once you get the feedback from the advisory working group, and then come back to us and then let us again inform on the program and see if it needs any tweaks or adjustments. I don't know if we need to do that in the resolution or if we can just go ahead and ask staff to consider coming back to us for some finalization and some blessing before it actually goes live. So I think those are both comments, and then just my request to use the knowledge of the board that you have here to really help you finalize the program before you launch it. So that's it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Are there other board member comments or questions? And again, I can't see everyone on my screen here, so please indulge me. I don't hear anything. What I'd like to do is to get some public input on this, as this is an important topic. In as much as we're kind of over the budget on this item, I'd like to limit that to 10 minutes. And what I'll ask staff is, if there are people who would like to speak, that we have 2 minutes. And for individuals who may be repeating what someone else said, just acknowledge that, but also allow time for others to speak as well. So maybe Courtney, are there individuals who are raising their hands?
There is.
On this topic? Great.
We do have a comment. It's from Ryan O'Connell. Please unmute your mic and go ahead with your comment.
Hi, my name is Ryan, and I work on new media channels. I've got like YouTube and TikTok accounts where I talk about some of the programs that CalHFA does. And I really want to highlight the comment that that was said early on. Ellen Martin said it's super important to have clarity about how this program's differentiated from other appreciation models that are available in the private sector. While they're not super prevalent, I think there's like a natural suspicion about some of those models. And the more information can be hosted in a trusted site like CalHFA's website that's super clear and super thorough, the easier it'll be to get that communication out. And selfishly, it's great for me when people have to come to third parties for information. But the more we can put that on CalHFA's website, then the easier the job becomes to actually spread this information and really you just see how many questions the board had. Like every homeowner is going to have that same level of interrogation. So the more you can work on it, the better. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Connell. Are there other comments?
No, not at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So I'd like to bring this item back to the board We do have a draft of a resolution, which is 22-21, which basically, as I understand it, really gives staff the green light to move this ahead. And if we're going to try to stay on that semicircular timeline that was in the presentation, this is a key action item where staff can go back, work with the advisory group to sort of hone some of these pieces and craft it to bring it along. I think that there's ways to accommodate some of the questions that individuals had to update the board and clarify some of these topics that I've been sort of jotting down here as well. And I understand Member Sotela's concern or issue about sort of bringing something back for further discussion. I think we need to have the cake baked in the oven here a bit, which is the dialogue with the working group. So maybe, unless there's any additional discussion, I'd love to entertain a motion to approve item 22-21.
This is Member Maria Cabildo moving that we adopt resolution number 22-21, authorizing Dream for All program and authorizing use of funds in the Dream for All fund.
Thank you, Member Cabildo. Is there a second?
I'll second
Director
that.
White, second.
Sorry for Ms. Director White. Thank you so much. So I have a motion made and seconded to approve resolution 22-21. Courtney, can you call the roll, please?
So Chair, this is Melissa. I'll go ahead and do the roll call.
Thank you.
Ms. Avila Farias?
Yes.
Ms. Cabildo?
Yes.
Chair Cervantes?
Yes.
Ms. Gunn?
Yes.
Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Velasquez?
Yes.
Ms. Kerrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Ms. Sotelo?
Enthusiastically, yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Resolution 22-21 is approved.
That's terrific. Thank you all very much for a very engaged discussion on this topic. The next item is agenda item 6. It's an informational item, supplemental subsidy for the mixed income program. And I understand that, let's see, Kate will be presenting on this.
Yes, good morning, Chair Cervantes. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Just barely morning. I can still sneak that in. My name is Kate Ferguson, and I am the Director of Multifamily Programs here at CalHFA. Today, I'll be requesting approval from the board for 4 multifamily affordable housing permanent loans. Each of these loans is being recommended for approval under our permanent loan program and is combined with the MIP subsidy loan under our MIP program. Prior to presenting these deals, I wanted to take just a few minutes to bring you up to speed on the extraordinary market dynamics affecting affordable housing development in California and throughout the country, which I think you all have seen in the press and or personally experienced, but they've had an impact on our 2022 MIP program, and I wanted to bring that to the board for your information. Specifically, I want to update you on the dynamics on all of these dynamics and their impact on the 12 2022 MIP projects, which are still in various stages of analysis, underwriting, and approval. Next slide, please. As we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic brought many significant challenges to projects which were in pre-development in 2020 and 2021. Supply chain slowdowns and material and labor shortages combined with significant inflation were full-blown by the end of full quarter 2022. Between March and June of 22, project development budgets in the CalHFA pipeline experienced up to 30% increases in hard costs alone, and approximately 8% increases in overall total development costs. Deals were submitted to CalHFA. The deals that were submitted to CIDLAC as part of the MIP process in late February and early March had developed major budget gaps by the time they were allocated tax-exempt bonds from CIDLAC in June. Having identified the inevitability of these gaps as deals went through the CIDLAC approval process this spring, CalHFA worked to identify ways in which to ensure the successful development of the 2,100 shovel-ready units of affordable housing for which we had provided preliminary permanent loan and MIP subsidy loan commitments. At the same time, developers were working with their other partners, contractors, localities, investors, and construction lenders to identify solutions to fill the gaps. Next slide, please. Next slide. There we go. This slide reflects the solutions we've seen employed to fill the funding gaps. In addition to CIDLAC's ability to launch an over-the-counter supplemental bond application process in just a few weeks, developers and investors came to the table with more equity, greater deferral of developer fees. Localities reduced their fee structures, including on capitalized land leases they had negotiated for these deals. And general contractors came in with tighter budgets, including reductions to overhead and profit. As for CalHFA, we were able to offer two important solutions. Under the proactive leadership of Erwin Tam, our Director of Finance, CalHFA was ready at the time CIDLAC awards were made in June to offer forward rate locks on CalHFA's preliminary permanent debt commitments. 11 of the 12 MIP project developers opted into the rate lock offer, which to date has provided a hedge of up to 25 basis points on the CalHFA perm loan interest rates. At the same time, our Executive Director, Tina Johnson-Hall, approved availability of additional MIP subsidy funds to fill substantiated gaps relating to financing costs, construction costs, and some approved soft costs, such as insurance premiums. After a 30-day application period, each of the 12 MIP developers submitted applications for supplemental MIP. Next slide, please. Ultimately, after underwriting each project based on CalHFA's standard underwriting and approval process, an additional $37.6 million in supplemental MIP availability was added to the initial 2022 MIP program funding. We will end the year with a total of $97 million in our MIP pool for 2022. This will make 2022 our second largest MIP round since the 2019 inception of the program. I want to briefly show you the impact on the project metrics related to 2022 to alleviate concerns that this additional commitment of funds, while a catalyst for moving these deals forward, might also compromise the outcomes of the program. Next slide, please. At the board meeting in May, I presented this slide to you in its initial format, which excluded the two highlighted rows. You can see the outcomes of both 2022 MIP and the aggregate MIP since 2019. The revised 2022 and aggregate numbers are highlighted in yellow. What this slide shows is that the total development cost per unit has increased from $433,000 to $466,000, approximately 8% in 2022. Overall development costs per unit had increased from $465,000 to $474,000. As a result, MIP 2022 per unit amounts increased from $28,000 to $46,000 per unit, which increased the overall MIP per unit for years 1 through 4 of the program from $36,000 to $41,000 a unit. Next slide, please. Quickly, this slide reflects overall unit affordability of the program, which hasn't changed with the addition of the supplemental MIP. Overall affordability remains at 58%. Next slide, please. I wanted to just point out that increases to the MIP availability for GAP didn't come without any compromises. This slide reflects the exceptions to specific terms of the subsidy MIP loan term sheet. As you can see, the primary areas which resulted in multiple exceptions to the term sheet related to maximum MIP per unit, which was especially challenging for smaller deals with large gaps, and maximum per project amount of MIP, which conversely was challenging for larger deals. One of our primary priorities is to ensure that we are not over-subsidizing any deal with our MIP subsidy. We work to leverage the perm debt to its maximum capacity. As such, our MIP 2022 term sheet specifically limited the total MIP to 50% of the CalHFA perm loan. We had 4 of our 12 deals which needed exceptions to this requirement, largely based on their affordability structure, which dictates their maximum permanent loan amount. These 4 deals are providing more ELI VLI units than the other deals and have lower average project affordability. Finally, we have 1 deal requesting an exception to our requirement that MIP be in second lien priority. This is a locality. In this case, the locality contribution was much larger than the MIP amount, and therefore it's recommended that CalHFA acquiesce to the request of the Glendale Housing Authority. This has happened in the past. It's not uncommon in these types of situations that we would take a second lien position. Next slide, please. Finally, I wanted to quickly run through the financial impact of adding the $37.6 million in supplemental MIP to 2022's availability. Our primary sources of funding for the mixed program are SB2 and AB 101. Over the years, the agency has carefully managed the state funding sources to finance the agency's MIP program, which included buy downs of perm loan rates in years 2020 and 2021, which you'll see reflected here. These buy downs of perm loan rates were done through participation in the loans. This year has been particularly challenging due to construction cost overruns and delays attributed to market volatility, which required CalHFA to divert some of the future MIP 2023 allocation to 2022, which is the $34.6 million that I've already talked about. While this strategy reduces the available funding for MIP in 2023 to just $35 million, we remain confident that CalHFA will be able to successfully leverage our 2023 MIP program with a designated allocation of bond cap from CIDLAC and a designated state tax credit allocation from TCAC to maintain permanent loan and unit production within the range of our historic performance. Next slide, please. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you for the briefing. Are there questions or comments from the board? I see Mr. Russell.
Yeah, well, just 2 comments. I mean, one is, I just have to say, Ms. Ferguson, I always appreciate that you have anticipated as we go through these slides, the question arising in my mind is the question you answered next. We pride ourselves on being a nimble agency, on being, and exploring all opportunities. And I find it compelling when I watch, to see how your mind works and how you present this. So I just wanted to thank you for that hard work and diligence there. And then the second note is just thank God for SB2 funds coming in, because there is a reliable source. It's not as much, obviously nothing meets the need, but oh my gosh, to be able to look ahead and be able to plan ahead and borrow ahead just a little bit. I know this is an umbrella for the discussions that are going to follow, the loans are going to follow, but I appreciate you providing us with this background in advance. So thank you for your work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments?
Yes, this is Delilah.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Let me, Kate, let me echo Stephen's comment about your professionalism and really being able to explain it very clearly. I think my questions really relate to the overall policy, and I think, it's demonstrated in several of the projects, particularly Pioneer, but the fact that we are loaning over $37 million of additional money into these projects, but not getting any additional affordability is something that, from a policy perspective, I think, we have to affirmatively agree to, and basically make sure that we're not setting up a precedent going forward, that it is a very unique situation given the cost overruns of these projects. And the fact that but for our money and but for this additional $37 million, these projects would not be built, right? So we would lose the opportunity of being able to, put over 500 units into the marketplace without our $37 million. But I don't want it to be lost that we're not really buying any additional affordability. That having been said, I think that in all but one of the projects, the deferred developer fee on the projects are fairly significant, and in evaluating the cash flows for the projects, what's happening is that the cash flows are going 100% to the payment of those deferred developer fees. In the case of Pioneer, it's a $19.2 million developer fee, of which about $11 million is deferred, and 100% of the cash flow that would have serviced our debt, both on the MIP primary loan and the MIP secondary loan, is actually being now further diverted because we are subordinating to the value, appraised value ground lease by the Glendale Housing Authority. So I think we can get into the particulars on each of the transactions, but I think the overall consideration that I'd like to point out to the board is, in the case of these $37 million of additional MIP loans, is it possible for us to, request that we be prioritized from the debt service, on the debt service side, to try to recover some, if not most, of the dollars that we're making available under the MIP program, supplemental program, prior to the developer getting the lion's share of the developer fee. I'm not saying don't pay any developer fee on the deferred basis, but in the case of Pioneer, where you're paying, upwards of $10 million to the developer fee prior to debt servicing our $2.4 million, I think it becomes an important policy discussion and policy implementation. Again, this is unique. I don't want to do it for the regular MIP program, but to the extent that this is a different vehicle, I think it's something that we should consider.
Right, and I think those are all really well taken comments, obviously. Ms. Sotelo, I would say on Pioneer, that's a very large project. It's over 300 units. And so while the developer fee is a little bit, awe-inspiring, if you look at it on a proportional basis, it's well within our allowable developer fee. Our MIP term sheet actually allows for the payment of developer fee first, and this is an industry-driven. We've gone back and forth on this, and tried to work with equity investors to do exactly what you're suggesting, to pay more of the subsidy debt ahead of paying the deferred developer fee. Investors, especially in this market, are just not willing to do that. So the split generally for us is that once the deferred developer fee is paid, we get a 50-50 split with the other lenders, any other subsidy lenders. So the city, whatever it would be, for cash flow to go towards our subsidy debt. It's important to note that it's contemplated in all our staff reports. If the MIP subsidy debt cannot be repaid from cash flow in the first 15 years, it's payable, and I think almost all of these deals are 17-year maturities. It's payable at maturity. So it's contemplated that the primary source of repayment in the event of large developer fees that have to come out of cash flow, that it's contemplated that that would be part of the recapitalization of the partnership at the time the loan matures. So I hear what you're saying, and I know that we've had this conversation. We continue to push back on the investor market to do just what you're suggesting, to try to ensure that there's sort of an equitable split of cash flow between developer fee. But I can tell you at this point, the equity investors in the market right now are not willing to do that. And that is the reason we allow it in our term sheet, and we reassess every year as we look at the term sheet in fourth quarter of the calendar year.
And I'm sorry, Kate, let me just be clear. I did not mean it for the regular MIP program. I'm talking just about the supplemental one that we're adding on to deal with the gap. So I wasn't referring to our regular program, our regular loan. I was requesting that we look at the supplemental incremental increase that we're adding to these projects, not getting additional affordability, but prioritizing and maybe sharing with the developer fee maybe not making it senior to the deferred developer fee, but maybe taking 25% of that developer fee and servicing our debt so that we can recycle that money back into the program, so that we can buy further affordability in future projects. So that was really the concern.
I understand, and we have had those conversations about the supplemental. The supplemental MIP, essentially what we're doing is rolling it into our original MIP commitment and allowing larger subsidy. I understand what you're saying. The developers and the investors have come back also and put in, maybe put in more money or change the terms of the limited partnership agreement to try to accommodate some of the cost overruns. So it's a pretty remarkable environment that we're working in. And I understand what you're saying. I just think with the industry where it is right now, that the investors would block that. And I can say that because we have had those conversations, to your concern, but it doesn't, of course, we can address that deal by deal as well.
Thank you. Are there any other board member questions or comments?
Chair, this is Sasha Kurgan. Just one comment. May I?
I'm sorry, please go ahead.
So Kate, thank you so much for the thoughtful presentation and the details about the process that you're establishing to consider these requests. I just want to note for the board members who've probably seen these articles as well, but just to ensure, recent articles from the Pew Charitable Trust, well-researched articles or well-researched efforts by NCSHA, and then validated by Novogradac are really pointing out that these cost escalations are national issues, not just limited to California. And so despite that, I really appreciate that in California, we are monitoring trends, needs, and today considering allocating resources accordingly to ensure that affordable housing projects don't stall or die out. Because those same articles that I mentioned are showing how there are other states that are not choosing to act, and they may be resourced differently. I did want to lift up what NCSHA notes and what we have been working on as a state with our federal partners to extend tax credits, to continue to look at other HUD programs that can help fill the gaps in these really extraordinary times. Kate, the only question that I have is the extent to which you expect these requests to keep coming in, or is this the day where we are considering all? Will there be a period? How does this work?
I think in 2023, the deals that were really hit hardest by the escalations in construction, by everything that we've talked about, have been sort of fourth quarter deals from 2021 and first quarter deals from 2022, which all of our MIP deals were originally budgeted in that time period. I think deals that we're seeing come in now, the deals that I expect to see go through the SIDLAC process at the next meeting, I expect that they've budgeted their deal initially based on the current market economics. So I don't expect us to come back next year and say, oh, it happened again, unless something extraordinary happens in the macroeconomics. This is really driven by cost increases that are coming from a variety of different places. And the good news is we haven't had to increase affordability on any of these deals to make them work. And that was a priority, I know, for us, to make sure that one of the tactics that the developers took wasn't to increase affordability, to eliminate the ELI and VLI units for higher cash flowing units to fill gaps. And I think we can be really proud of that we've been able to preserve the affordability of the units as it originally was contemplated.
Proud indeed. If I may, just one more comment, I'd encourage that as we continue to work with developers that are reporting cost overruns, that there's at least a friendly message that says, please be advised of all the state legislation that is passed annually to prevent barriers to development, and to make sure that they are kind of have that information going in as they're working with cities and counties that may be permitting these developments, to make sure that there's no other time delay, which will relate to additional costs.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And time delays were not a big part of the supplemental MIP requests. And we did, not even anecdotally, we did see specific localities come to the table and really with major reductions to their land lease structures, to their fee, to their costs. And so that was really, it was a real team effort to get these deals over the finish line.
I love to hear it. Thank you.
Other comments or questions from board members?
Chairman Cervantes, it's Director Fred White. I'll make a quick comment.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Kate, for a great presentation over the MIP program. I just want to continue to put this on the table and in front of the board in terms of how we think about other partners. I think we do a great job with our state partners, in particular CIDLAC and TCAC. When we're deploying this capital, I just want to make sure that we continue to think about alternative sources of capital that we can match this program with. And I don't know, there's tons of there's technology sources, obviously. There's the Wall Street sources, but I want to make sure that we are thinking outside of our box in terms of how we can match this program. And this is not to say that we're doing a wonderful job through CIDLAC and through the LIHTC program. I think there's opportunity to expand this beyond those traditional sources.
I think that our fearless leader would agree with you. And we are definitely focused on that very thing right now.
Great. And please continue to let me know how I could help.
Absolutely.
I think it's a great opportunity for us to think beyond what we've traditionally how we've traditionally partnered.
Agree wholeheartedly. Yes.
Right. I'm getting mindful of the time.
Yes,
I want to get through these transactions, and I want to make sure we keep quorum, otherwise we'll lose them. So in that vein, are there any other comments, questions from the board on this topic before we get into the specifics? Seeing none, then I'd like us to move to the next agenda item to discuss the Sarah Apartments, please. And I believe Kate Ferguson will lead us through that as well.
Yes. Again, for the record, Kate Ferguson, Director of Multifamily Programs at CalHFA. And we'll roll right into the presentations for the 4 permanent loans we're recommending for approval today. All 4 of these deals have been through CalHFA's complete underwriting and internal approval process, with final approval provided by the Executive Director and the Chief Deputy Director. So let's start with Sarah Apartments. I have members of the multifamily team, including Sheena Coe, our credit officer, Jennifer Beardwood, the underwriter on this deal, here with me today on the phone today. And we're also happy to welcome representatives of the developer, Sahar Sultani, who is the development manager, and Artie Zahidani, president of St. Anton Communities, LLC. I know that you've all received and reviewed the packages, so I will try to be brief. Sarah Apartments is a 79-unit family project to be constructed in the city of Fremont in Alameda County. Today, I'm requesting board approval to provide $27,179,522 in permanent loan financing to the borrower. This loan will be in addition to a $10.2 million MIP subsidy loan and conduit issuance of approximately $47 million in tax-exempt bonds and up to $25 million in taxable bonds. The developer is St. Anton Communities, LLC. This is our first mixed income program project with the developer after having done previous conduit only deals with them. St. Anton Communities has 40 projects in their portfolio, inclusive of affordable, market rate, and mixed income deals. They have 2 affordable projects in their pipeline and another 4 currently under construction. The project received an allocation of tax-exempt bonds and 4% federal tax credits from CIDLAC and TCAC in June, and Bank of America will be both the construction lender and the tax credit investor. Next slide, please. Sarah consists of one elevator service 6-story podium style building, 4 stories of residential over 2 levels of parking garage. The site is approximately 2.6 acres. Majority is currently vacant with an existing commercial structure that is vacant. The existing vacant structure will be demolished. The site is located within a high resource area per TCAC and HCD's opportunity area map. Pursuant to a recent appraisal, the project's absorption period is approximately 8 months, and the capture rate is approximately 4.8% of total demand for family units within the primary area, which would be Fremont and Newark. Total units will include 121 one-bedroom units, 52 bedroom units, 8 3-bedroom units. Affordability for the 177 units will be from 30 to 80% AMI. Next slide, please. This is the project site. The current owner, developer St. Anton Communities, purchased the property in 2015 for an amount of 7.2. St. Anton and the borrower entered into a purchase and sale agreement dated February 10th of 2022, which expires 1/1/2023 for the amount of the original purchase price at no increase, $7.2 million. Next slide, please. And I'm going to skip to the end, and we would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I want to ask the board if there are any questions. Again, I want to be mindful of time and keeping the quorum in place. Are there any questions on this particular transaction? I don't see any. So if there are no questions, then I will ask for a motion to approve.
This is Stephen Russell here. I'll move approval of the resolution.
Thank you.
Second.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch you the second.
Oh, this is Sasha Kurgan.
Thank you so much. So we have a motion made and second to approve the Sarah Apartments financing program. Will staff please call the roll?
Ms. Avila Farias,
Yes.
Ms. Cabildo,
Yes.
Chair Cervantes,
Yes.
Ms. Gunn,
Yes.
Mr. Starr,
Yes.
Mr. Velazquez,
Yes.
Ms. Kurgan,
Yes.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Ms. Sotelo has stepped away, so we'll mark her absent. Mr. White,
Yes.
Resolution 22-22 is approved.
Thank you very much. I understand that the Mainline North project has been pulled.
It has.
So moving on to agenda item 9. And I think what I might ask here is, again, I'm really conscious of the quorum, and maybe just accelerate the presentation if that's possible. It's very thorough in the package and provides a terrific amount of information. So maybe the condensed version might be useful here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me just give you what we're asking for. How about that? And
well, I'm recusing myself from this item, so I'm going to, I don't know if I need to sign out or can simply tune out. And you could text me to log back in.
Yes, Mr. Russell will notify you. We'd ask that you would sign out, please.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Chair Cervantes, this is Anna Marie.
Yes,
Can you hear
please
me?
go ahead.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
I just wanted to get acknowledged. Can we just do a quick check-in of, it seems like you're concerned in regards to making sure we have quorum, but instead of, rushing through the items or feeling time pressure, I think maybe staff can just check in to make sure, because I think we might just be fine so that you don't have that looming pressure that we'll lose board members.
Yeah. Instead of texting on the side here, just to confirm that as well.
Yeah, I think we just need to just do a quick, we're halfway point. If we can just check in, and if we're okay that way, it relieves a little pressure off of you and chairing to make sure we're okay with the quorum.
Yeah, This is Member Maria Cabildo. I notified staff that I would be leaving at 12:30.
Yeah.
Melissa, are you able to provide at this juncture, you know, with the departures, if we're going to be okay?
We should be fine. Are there any other directors that are planning to leave early?
Yes, I have to leave at 1 o'clock.
Okay. I think we might just be able to make it with those changes as long as everyone else will stay with us.
Great, then it sounds like we're going to be good even with those two departures. Thank you, Melissa.
We may squeak through, so thank you. So then maybe, Kate, I'll let you do your presentation, but again, if anyone is going to be leaving, a heads up would be really helpful here because I want to make sure we get through these. Thank you.
Okay, on to 8181 Allison, which is a 147 unit family project to be located in the city of La Mesa, San Diego County. Joining members of the multifamily team here is the project developer, Darren Bobrowski, Vice President of Capital Markets with USA Multifamily Development, Inc. Today, I'm seeking board approval to provide a $20,685,000 permanent loan on the subject property. This loan will be in addition to a $7.076 million MIP subordinate loan. We could have probably said 7.1 million MIP subordinate loan and conduit issuance of approximately 31,875,000 of tax exempt bonds and up to 14 million in taxable bonds. The developer is USA Multifamily Development, Inc. KeyBank is the construction lender, and WNC is the tax credit investor. CalHFA currently has experience with the developer, including 4 projects under construction, including 1 conduit and 3 MIP deals. The 2022 MIP includes this project and 1 other new construction project for the developer, which will be presented at a later date. The developer has an additional 11 affordable projects in their development pipeline, augmenting the 122 completed projects and greater than 17,000 units they've already developed. This project received tax exempt bonds of 4% tax credits from TCAC and SIDLAC at the June 2022 meetings. Next slide, please. The project is 1 elevator serviced 5-story podium style building. The site is approximately 1.23 acres, currently vacant with a surface parking lot. The site is located in a moderate resource area per TCAC and HCD's opportunity area map. Pursuant to a recent appraisal, the project's absorption is approximately 6 months, and per the market study, the capture rate is approximately 3.3% of total demand for family units within the primary market area, which is the city of La Mesa. Total units will include 103 1-bedroom, 44 2-bedroom units. Overall affordability will be from 30 to 70% AMI. Next slide, please. The next slide will be a picture of the site, and the current owners, the city of La Mesa and USA Properties Fund, entered into a disposition and development agreement in 2021 that expires 12/12 of 22. The borrower will enter into a ground lease with the city of La Mesa for a term of at least 65 years for an amount of $6.62 million. The capitalized ground lease payment of $6.62 will be funded by a housing successor loan from the city of the same amount at construction loan closing. The loan will be for a term of 65 years at 3% simple interest, with an initial payment of $25,000 due at construction loan closing, and thereafter via a residual receipt split. Next slide, please. And with that, I'm going to skip to the end and take any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from the board on the project or the presentation? I don't think I see any on my screen. I know staff sees any hands raised. It's nice to see an echo of redevelopment here with the Housing Successor Agency in play, which brings back fond memories of a distant time. So if there are no questions on this from the board, then I'd like to entertain a motion to approve Resolution 22-24 to approve our commitment.
This is Teresa Gunn. I'll move approval of the resolution.
Thank you. So second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Starr, thank you very much. So you have motion made and seconded to approve resolution number 22-24 to make a final loan commitment for the housing project. Will staff call the roll, please?
Ms. Avila Farias?
Yes.
Ms. Cabildo?
Yes.
Chair Cervantes?
Yes.
Ms. Gunn?
Yes.
Mr. Starr?
Yes.
Mr. Velazquez?
Yes.
Ms. Kurgan?
Yes.
Mr. Russell? Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Russell's recused himself. Ms. Sotelo? Ms. Sotelo is still absent. Mr. White? Mr. White?
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Yes.
Thank you. Resolution 22-24 is approved.
Thank you very much. Our next item is number 10 on the agenda. Kate, can you walk us through the 515 Pioneer Drive project, please?
Yes, sir. 515 Pioneer, which is a 340 unit project to be located in the city of Glendale in Los Angeles County. This project is being developed by National Community Renaissance, or NATCOR, in partnership with Link Housing. We'd like to welcome Leslie Hampton, the Vice President of Project Development, joining us from NATCOR, and Will Sager, the Director of Finance, joining us from Link Housing, who are both on the phone with us today. Next slide, please. 515 Pioneer Drive's 340 unit project will provide 248 units of family housing and 92 units of senior housing. Today, I'm seeking board approval to provide a $30,892,000 permanent loan to the borrower. This loan will be in addition to a $10.2 million MIP subordinate loan and MIP subsidy loan and conduit issuance of approximately $82.47 million of tax-exempt bonds and up to $10 million of taxable bonds. As I said, Link Housing Corporation and National Community Renaissance are the developers. Bank of America is both the construction lender and the tax credit investor. CalHFA currently has 3 projects in our portfolio with Link and affiliates, and 10 projects owned by NATCOR. Both are experienced developers and have a combined total of 175 projects, inclusive of more than 16,000 units. An allocation of tax-exempt bonds and 4% credits was received from the borrower from SIDLAC and TCAC at the June 22 meeting. Link, I don't think we need that. Okay, next slide, please. This is the project site. The current owner developer, Glendale Housing Authority, entered into a lease option dated 8/10/21, which expires 12/31/22 with the borrower. The borrower will enter into a ground lease agreement with the city for a term of 55 years for an amount of $12.4 million. The capitalized ground lease payment of $12.4 million will be funded by the city's land loan of the same amount at construction loan closing. The term of the city land loan will be for 55 years with an initial annual payment of $1 due at construction loan closing, and thereafter for an annual payment of $1. The loan will be restructured as a residual receipt loan to be split based on pro rata share with CalHFA at 3% simple interest. And I think, next slide, please. I think that's the presentation for 515 Pioneer, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from the board on the 515 Pioneer Drive project? don't see any on my screen. So if there are none, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve resolution number 20, or to adopt rather, resolution number 22-25 to
Stephen Russell.
authorize the commitment.
Stephen Russell, so moved.
Thank you very much.
I'll second Anna Marie Frias.
Thank you very much. So motion's been made and seconded to adopt resolution number 22-25 for our CalHFA's commitment for the 515 Pioneer Drive project. Will staff call the roll, please?
Ms. Davila Frias,
Yes.
Ms. Cabildo,
Yes.
Ms. Chair Cervantes,
Yes.
Ms. Gunn,
Yes.
Mr. Starr,
Yes.
Mr. Velasquez,
Yes.
Ms. Kurgan,
Yes.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
Ms. Sotelo, Ms. Sotelo is still absent. Mr. White,
Yes.
resolution 22-25 is approved.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is item number 11, which relates to the Anton Power In project. And if Kate, you could walk us through this as well, we
Yes,
appreciate it. Thank you.
Happy to. Last but certainly not least, today I'm presenting the Anton Power In, which is a 94-unit family project to be developed in the city and county of Sacramento. The developer is Anton Devco, Inc. And with us today are two members of the development team, Brandon Dinnan, who is the Managing Director of Northern California and Colorado, and Leanne Thomas, who is the Acquisitions Manager. Today I'm seeking board approval to provide a $23,201,000 permanent loan to the borrower. This loan will be in addition to a $12.2 million MIP subordinate loan and conduit issuance of approximately $35.3 million of tax-exempt bonds and up to $16 million in taxable bonds. Bank of the West is the construction lender and Raymond James is the tax credit investor. This will be the second MIP project done by the developer, who has completed a total of 50 projects of multifamily units, 17 of which are affordable, with approximately 9,000 total units, 2,500 affordable under management. An allocation of tax-exempt bonds and 4% tax credits were received by the borrower at the June 2022 CIDLEC and TCAC board meetings. Next slide, please. The project will consist of 8 residential buildings and 1 community building. The site is approximately 7.55 acres and is currently vacant. The site is located within a high segregation and poverty resource area per TCAC and HCD's opportunity area map. Pursuant to a recent appraisal report, the project's absorption period is approximately 8 months. And the market study indicates capture rate of approximately 2.5% of the total demand for family units within the primary market area, which is Southern Sacramento, Florin, and Northern Elk Grove. Total units will include 96 one-bedroom, 48 two-bedroom, and 53 bedroom. Affordability will be from 30 to 70% of Sacramento County area median income. Next slide, please. Again, the project site is shown here. The current owner seller of the property is Kellyanne Commercial LLC, Michael DeGrazia, Thomas Halfaker, and M&M LP. The developer, Anton Devco, entered into a purchase and sale agreement on 4/22/20 and subsequent amendments to the PSA for a purchase price of $1.3 million. The purchase and sale agreement expires 12/30/2022. The site is expected to be assigned to the borrower, Power in Sacramento, at construction loan closing. And with that, we'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I'd like to see if there are any questions or comments from members of the board. I do not see any hands raised or hear questions. So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve resolution number 22-26 to approve CalHFA's commitment for the Anton Power In project.
This is Stephen Russell. I would so moved. I mean, the project looks to be an extraordinary investment in a community that can use this kind of community development.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
I will second Anna Marie Farias.
Thank you very much. So motion has been made and seconded to approve resolution number 22-26. Will staff call the roll, please?
Ms. Davila Farias,
Yes.
Ms. Cabildo,
Yes.
Chair Cervantes,
Yes.
Ms. Gunn,
Yes.
Mr. Starr,
Yes.
Mr.
Is that me?
Sealer, oh, excuse me, Director Velasquez.
Yes.
One more time, I'm sorry, I think I might have frozen. Director Velasquez.
Yes.
I don't know if people are having technical difficulty. I'm having technical difficulty, sorry. So I did hear Director Velasquez, yes. Ms. Kurgan?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Kurgan. Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Ms. Sotelo? I do not see Ms. Sotelo. I think Ms. Sotelo is absent. Mr. White?
Yes.
Resolution 22-26 is approved.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank Kate Ferguson for the presentations and the walkthrough earlier. It's been a very challenging market environment this year. And I think someone else made a comment earlier about being nimble in the face of that and the value of that. And I can certainly see that with the effort made here. So thank you all for working through this. The next item on the agenda is item number 12, which is informational report. There's a variety in the packet presented by staff. I'd like to see if there are any questions for staff on any of these reports, any clarifications that board members would like to raise on these items.
If I may, not on today's reports, but we have, I think, given short attention to the legislative updates the last couple of meetings. In our next meeting, if we could spend some time maybe looking ahead to the new legislative season and maybe make sure we carve out enough time so that Francesc can give his report on the wrap up of last year and look ahead to next.
Duly noted. Thank you. That's a good comment. Okay. I have a question. I couldn't help but notice on the graphic describing the ADU grant program, August takes off like a rocket. So is there just a sense of like what's happening with the, that's really great to see. I'm just kind of curious if there's any background on that. Just a highlight or two the staff might want to share.
I don't see Ellen on the screen, but I can try to take that. And if she wants to chime in, that would be great. I think where you see that rocket taking off is that's where we brought on a new track for the program, in which a company called HPP Cares came on board to do managed escrow, which then opened up sort of the floodgates for folks that are, strategizing on how to build their ADU utilizing home equity lines of credit and other alternative financing, rather than the standard Fannie Freddie products that require you, or FHA products that require you to basically refinance your home. And so a lot of, I think our initial track was the GSE track. And I think a lot of the folks out there that are ready to build an ADU are not interested in refinancing their extremely low first mortgages. And so once we were able to bring on this secondary track, we've seen an explosion in the interest and reservations on the program. So that's reflected in the charts.
Thank you. That's helpful. Appreciate that. Are there any other board member questions on the information items?
There's just one. This is Sasha Kurgan. Chair, may I ask one
Please.
question? And perhaps it's something that we can get into in a future meeting, but just looking at the single family performance by region, there's so much impressive activity and still big geographic disparities. So I think I'd be curious to kind of have a conversation about ways to increase geographic uptakes and uptake, and maybe highlight some of the cases where we're seeing, I'm going to call back to the San Francisco condo example that we heard earlier. If it can happen there, how can we get into a more proportional representation in our more populous counties like LA, which is kind of on the lower end of the spectrum? I'm sorry, I may not have the right page number right now, but there's a great graphic that shows this, and LA is just the most populous, just not represented in an equivalent share of single family activity. So just more of a comment and perhaps discussion for another day.
Great, thank you. Duly noted. I think that's a good segue to the next board topic, other board matters. So I think we want to sort of flag that as a discussion topic for a subsequent meeting. It's a good observation. In that vein, agenda 13, which are other board matters, are the things that you board members would like us to address at this meeting. There's a few items that are sort of flagged here, and from the prior discussions that I'll go through with staff. But are there any other items that board members would like us to take a look at going ahead?
Yes, Chair Cervantes, Anna Marie. I'd love to have an update on the ADU program from staff at some time in a future agenda. And also I'd like the board to consider bringing back onto the agenda discussion about our board meetings in person or virtual or hybrid, but having some dialogue around that.
Thank you. Good. Those are good comments. Any other comments from the board? Okay, so I think the plan would be I'll have a chance to connect with our executive director and staff and talk through these, and I think we'll see if we can sort of schedule them out going ahead. There's some really good items to unpack here, and will be good for follow through. And with that, then, unless there's anything else that board members would like to raise, then we'll move to agenda item 14, which is just general public comment. We welcome members of the public who have a comment on a matter that might be before our purview, and you just ask that individuals limit their time to 2 minutes. And I will ask staff to please open it up to see if there's anyone who has raised their hand.
Yes, we have a comment right now from Ryan O'Connell. Please unmute your mic and go ahead, Ryan.
Hey, I also like the big spike in the ADU grant program in August. And I just wanted to, so this is what I was working on with Molly at CalHFA and HPP Cares, Catherine. And I think the things I want to flag are, it's amazing that you were able to adapt the program on the fly like this and make it successful and embrace new media. I always like that, so that we can get the message out there. But now the HPP Cares portal is actually shut down temporarily because they're trying real hard to make sure this first cohort gets a really excellent level of customer service and communication and doesn't flood their systems or CalHFA systems. And I want to make sure that y'all are staffed up for the other 2,000 applicants that'll come through, and give whatever resources you need to the team to process those, because this is going to be spiky. And I fully expect and hope that you guys seek more funding for the program, because we can facilitate the construction of a lot of naturally affordable housing through these very relatively cheap grants. You know, $40,000 gets a project done in somebody's backyard compared to $500,000 on a multifamily project. You know, that's super powerful. Love all the work that's gone into it, and hope you guys are ready to staff up, because it's just the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connell.
Okay, we're gonna, yes, I'm gonna move on to our next commenter, Robert Walls. Please unmute your mic and go ahead.
Okay, am I unmuted? Good afternoon. I was wondering, are you gonna readdress the mortgage assistance program for those of us that slipped through the cracks due to like little technicalities in the verbiage that was placed on the eligibility requirements? Is there going to be addressed another round of possibilities to apply for this for those that have been denied?
We'll have staff follow up on that item. It's not really something we can discuss at this point, but we'll flag it for staff.
Okay. Yeah. Is there a point of contact I could speak to over there? Because I've missed this twice due to a 4-day. One was a 4-day difference in time period, and the other one was it's just been difficult. And I'm now 5 months behind on my mortgage.
Okay, maybe if we could provide your contact information to, I know Melissa, to your recording, we could see about follow up there.
I appreciate that, Mr. Matthews.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there other comments from the public?
At this time, there are no other comments.
Okay. So with that then, we are moving into the last agenda item, which is an adjournment. And so I would say, I think the protocol is just to move to adjourn unless there's no objections. And I will note that hopefully, like all our projects, we came in on time and under budget. Hopefully that's a good omen for the transactions we approved today. I want to just get a clarification, make sure I'm doing this right here. Please all forgive me for my rookie move here, which is maybe Melissa or Courtney or council, we don't need a motion for this. I could just move as we adjourn, correct? Thumbs
Correct.
up on that? Okay, and with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all so much. Look forward to seeing you all again, I believe, next month. And we'll have certainly interesting topics to discuss. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.